We're back again with On the Moneyline, a podcast by MMAPlay365. I'm your host, Newsome, and today I'm joined by a very special guest with the UFC Bantamweight knockout artist, Randy Costa, joining me to break down some fights. Randy, thank you for coming on. How are you doing, man?
Good, bro. I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm looking forward to breaking down some fights. We've got a pretty good card ahead of us. It's gonna be cool.
Definitely, man. The pleasure's all mine. But just before we dive into the fights, with this being an MMA betting podcast, I've got to ask you, do you wager anything yourself on these fights?
I'm not a betting man. But there are probably a couple fights that if I were a betting man, then I'm gonna put money on.
Awesome. And just like guys like James Vick and Anthony Rocco Martin are quite vocal with it in regards to betting on themselves, is that something you've ever done, you ever will do, or?
No, but if one of my friends bets on me, then and they win, I want my 10%.
For sure. So let's break down some fights. And in the main event, we've got Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. On the money line, we've got Tyron Woodley, the -190 favourite. The comeback on Gilbert Burns is +165. Now, the slim value, in my opinion, on Tyron Woodley, I do feel the line is about right, but I can see some money coming back on Gilbert Burns sort of closer to fight night. So maybe we do see the dog on Gilbert Burns dropping a little bit. And obviously, Tyron Woodley is the favourite, dropping a little bit as well. But, Randy, I've got to know, who have you got in this main event? It's a good one.
So I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not a betting man, so I can't really give you the in and outs on, plus, minus, wages, all that stuff. But obviously, Tyron is the favorite. If I am a betting man, then I am going to bet against Tyron. I am going to go with Gil Burns on this fight. Gil Burns has been on an absolute tear as of late. He has won he's won like his last 6 or 7 MMA fights. His last loss was to Dan Hooker in 2018 at a 155-pound fight. Since then, he's been killing it at the 170-pound division. Staying extremely, extremely active, fighting people on short notice. And Tyron Woodley's coming off, he got beat up in last March by Usman. I don't think Tyron's going to be able to deal with what Gil Burns is going to be presenting. Gil Burns is a savage with kickboxing, and he's an absolute killer on the ground. Woodley's extremely explosive, but I think, like we saw in the Usman fight, I think you can get Woodley to kind of quit. I don't think we have that in Gil Burns. If I'm a betting man, I'm going to go with the underdog in this fight.
For sure, man. Now, I'm leaning the other way towards Tyron Woodley now. I love Gilbert Burns, and it sucks really because I really wanted to pick him to win this fight. But after watching tape and breaking it down, I just feel that the style slightly favours Woodley a little bit here, because Woodley's got this. He's got this thing about him, and I say the same thing with the Korean Zombie as well. He has this ability to really make their opponents think twice before coming forward, before striking, and it almost pauses their offense. And I feel that Tyron's going to be able to do that with Burns in this fight as well. He did it with Darren Till. Darren Till didn't, on record, didn't officially land a single strike or throw a strike. So, I feel that Woodley's going to have that sort of ability to make Gilbert Burns think twice before coming in. And again, I almost feel that from a style perspective, that it's these dominant wrestlers that are going to really shut someone down like Tyron Woodley, because, Woodley's faced guys like Wonderboy, who's a phenomenal striker. He beat him once over the 2 fights, drew the other fight. And again, I just feel that he's fought a lot of really talented guys, and the only fighter recently that's been able to shut him down was Usman. And, Usman's a monster, a cardio machine, a guy that never gave him space. So I feel that Woodley's going to play the game he always plays. I think he's going to be on the back foot, looking for the counter shot. And again, I think if it goes 5 rounds, I feel that Woodley's cardio is going to be better as well. Even when you look at Woodley in the 5th round against Kamaru Usman, he wasn't breathing overly heavy. He wasn't hands on hips, gassed out. And that was a grueling fight from Usman. Usman really put it on him. And it's, as a fight yourself, Randy, you'll be able to appreciate that, the clinching, the wrestling, the grinding is the stuff that takes it out of you most. So I feel that, like I say, Woodley's going to have that cardio edge. I think he's going to be able to pause the offense of Gilbert. And I think if Burns comes in and is a little bit reckless, I think Woodley could land that straight right, potentially hurt him, knock him out. So, yeah, like I say, I'm going with Tyron Woodley. It wouldn't be a massive shock if Burns did pull the victory out here. You've got in my opinion, two fighters, one potentially on the decline. I'm not saying Woodley is declining, but, you know, he's definitely his best days are behind him. And I think with Gilbert Burns, his best days are in front of him. So you have got that trajectory issue there. But like I say, I'm going to favour Tyron Woodley for this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai. On the money line, Augusto Sakai is a -115 favourite, with the comeback on Ivanov as a -105 underdog. So again, really, really close lines, nearly a pick 'em. I think there's value either side. You know, if you've got a strong read on one of these fighters, either side's bettable. It's not as if, you know, one guy's a -300 favourite and you're not going to touch him. So, yeah, value either side. As for where the line goes, I feel that we are going to have a little bit of fluctuation here. I think we're going to see the line maybe flipping a little bit, and it could end up a pick 'em by fight night as my prediction. But, Randy, on the fight, who have you got winning?
Man, I'm going to go with, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, Ivanov. I'm going to go with him just because his last fight was against one of the most dangerous punchers in the division, in Derek Lewis. I believe that was his last fight. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. That was his last fight. Granted, he lost. It was a split decision. It was an extremely boring fight. But he went to decision with Junior Dos Santos. He beat Ben Rothwell, Tia Tuvasana. He's fought some guys. He's extremely tough, extremely durable. But I'm not sure about Sakai. I mean, he has quite a few finishes on his record too, but I don't think he's fought the level of competition that Ivanov has fought. He has a split decision win over Andrei Arlovsky, but I'm not sure how much that holds up against a guy like Ivanov. You know, they're completely different fighters, and Arlovsky is he showed a lot better in his last fight, but he's definitely on the decline. Like you said, it's going to be a pick 'em fight. It's going to be a fight night thing. I can't choose winner to lose or how they're going to win. But, you know, if held a gun to my head, I'm going to go Ivanov.
Yeah, it's a close fight. I agree with you. Now, for anybody that's listened to my previous podcasts, especially when we were over at Newsome MMA as well, you know, I've been quite vocal in regards to me not really being a fan of Ivanov and his style. But I'm actually, for the first time as well on one of these podcasts, I'm going to be picking him to win the fight because I feel that, man, after you watch that Derek Lewis fight, I don't know what it takes at this point to knock someone like Ivanov out. I think he's probably got the best chin in the heavyweight division, potentially the UFC as well. The shots that he was taking from Lewis, a man shouldn't have been conscious after those shots. Flying knees, elbows, clean straight right hands. You know, Lewis threw everything at him and he stood there and took it. So I feel that, first of all, Sakai probably won't knock him out, because I feel that if Derek Lewis couldn't, then Sakai won't. Obviously, it is the heavyweight division, and if he finds a button, he's going to put him away. But I just don't see it as a very likely outcome. And if Ivanov can stay out of these clinch positions, which I feel is where Sakai is going to win the fight with his Muay Thai, he has got nice knees to the body and to the head as well in the clinch. I do think that Ivanov will be able to land slightly more volume. He's got to push forward, though, because if he keeps moving back constantly, again, it's not a good look for the judges. And that's one of the reasons why I thought he actually lost that fight against Ben Rothwell. But, you know, the judges didn't see that going that way on the night. So, yeah, I'm picking Ivanov to win the fight. I think he's going to be able to do a little bit more. I think he's going to be able to withstand the hard shots from Sakai. And, you know, it almost makes you wonder if Sakai is throwing the kitchen sink at Ivanov and he's not going anywhere. What's that going to do for Sakai inside the cage, knowing that you've just hit your opponent with the best you've got and he's still standing there? So, like I say, I'm going to pick Ivanov to win the fight. I think he's going to be able to land more. I think his counters are going to be on point. And I think at some point in this fight, he's going to get Sakai again, just like I was saying with Gilbert Burns and Woodley just a minute ago. I think he's going to get Sakai just sort of second guessing, maybe pausing on his offense a little bit, and he'll be able to capitalize on that. So I'm picking Blagoy Ivanov to win the fight. And in the next fight, we've got a record breaker, Kevin Holland, breaking the record for the quickest turnaround whilst dropping down a weight. You know, he fought only a couple of weeks ago, and now he's dropping down to welterweight. He fights Daniel Rodriguez, who had a phenomenal performance in his debut. You've got Kevin Holland as a -235 favourite. The comeback on Daniel Rodriguez +195. I think at the minute it's probably a dog or pass situation. I do have slight concerns with Holland, you know, the quick turnaround and the move down in weight as well. And like I say, Daniel Rodriguez overcame adversity against Tim Means and really put it on him to finish him. So I do feel it is a dog or pass right now. As for where the line goes, I don't know if we're going to see too much movement in the line. I feel that it's probably about settled where it is right now. But Randy, Kevin Holland, Daniel Rodriguez, who have you got, man?
I'm gonna have to go with the favorite in this fight. If D-Rod wins this fight, I guess I'm not going to be overly surprised. But we're dealing with Kevin Holland, and you mentioned him going, down a weight class. If you look at his last weigh-in, he was 182.5 pounds. The fight before that versus Brendan Allen back in October, he was 183.5 pounds. So he's a walking around middleweight. He's a natural 170-pound guy. I think the quickness, weird explosiveness, and kind of that funky stand-up, not anything crazy unorthodox, but that constant movement, dancing and very wiry, if you will. We're talking about Kevin Holland, who went to decision with Thiago Santos. He beat Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert's extremely good. Alessio Di Chikara, he was beating up Brendan Allen in that fight in October, and then Brendan Allen caught him with that choke in the second round after he'd been split open. Brendan Allen showed a lot of resilience in that fight as well. But yeah, man, I think D-Rod's extremely good too. But Kevin Holland he's been extremely active. He's very wiry, very weird, very oddly built, I guess, for that division. He doesn't have really much muscle mass. He's a very lean guy. Extremely explosive, extremely fast. I think it's going to be hard for D-Rod to get a number on him. If D-Rod wins this fight, he's going to knock him out. If Holland wins this fight, he's going to knock D-Rod out. So I don't see this fight going to the judges. If it does go to the judges, however, I think D-Rod's going to win that fight. I'm not really sure how Kevin Holland's gas take is going to be. But I think the betting line is pretty fair at this point, given Kevin Holland, this how his latest performances have been in this tricky style, and he's a tall welterweight too. He's 6'3". Yeah, man, I think we have a very exciting fight on our hands, and I think I'm gonna give the edge to Kevin Holland in this fight for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and especially with the Daniel Rodriguez, if he wins, he's going to knock Kevin Holland out, because I actually don't see another path to victory for Rodriguez. I think that his way to win this fight is to come forward, land something on Holland and knock him out. But I think that's going to be easier said than done in this fight. Kevin Holland, for me, is an A+ athlete. He's unbelievably good, talented, and his ceiling is as high as you can imagine anybody's ceiling to go. I genuinely think that Kevin is that good. The issue that I have with Holland is he makes unnecessary mistakes from time to time inside the cage, positional mistakes on the mat. I think he spends a lot of time almost trying to get in the opponent of his, in the head of his opponent. He's talking to his opponent, he's talking to the coaches, he's talking to the judges. He said in his last fight that Daniel Cormier wasn't there for his wrestling advice, so he had to go out there and get Fluffy out early. But again, that Fluffy fight is just a pure example of how good Kevin Holland is, because he went in there and he absolutely dominated Fluffy and got him out so quickly. And like I say, I think he's a real problem when he puts it all together, when he's on his game, when there's no messing about inside the cage. I think his length, his distance management is going to cause Rodriguez quite a few problems. And for that reason, I do think it's going to be difficult for Rodriguez to actually land something clean, or maybe multiple punches, a combination clean on Holland. I don't think he's going to be there all too often to be hit. So, like I say, I do favour Holland in that respect. And like you say, Gerald Meerschaert, he's a good fighter, and Kevin Holland was rolling with him on the mat. So, he's good. He's good there as well. He's good everywhere. So if Kevin Holland's on his game, he's putting it all together. Yeah, I think he's gonna get the job done here against Daniel Rodriguez. So I'm going to be picking Kevin Holland to win the fight. And in the next fight, we've got Roosevelt Roberts versus Brok Weaver. A really interesting fight. We've got Roberts, the -320 favourite. The comeback on Brok Weaver is +260. The slim value, in my opinion, on Roberts. I didn't expect the line to be quite this high. Obviously, I did, understand that Roberts was going to be the favourite, but I don't think Brok Weaver is as bad as some people online are making out. I actually think he's quite a good fighter. with that being said, like I say, there's still some value on Roberts, maybe not playing him straight. Where the line goes, I think, again, it might be a line that sort of settles around where it is now. Maybe a bit of money comes in on Brok Weaver close to fight night. But as for the fight itself, Randy, who have you got?
Man, first of all, I agree with, I don't think the line should be, that spread apart. I agree with you. I don't think Brok is as bad as whoever's making the numbers seems to think. I think the thing that if Brok wins this fight is his extreme durability. Brok is extremely tough, extremely mentally tough, extremely resilient. Roberts, on the other side, he's very slick. He has good kickboxing, mixes things up well. He's a very, very exciting fighter. I think they kind of did Roosevelt Roberts a disservice, or I think they kind of threw Roberts a bone with this fight. I don't think this is the toughest fight for Roosevelt Roberts, and we know that Brok Weaver has had a history of tough weight cuts in the past, so that definitely plays a part. This is definitely one of the fights that I was looking forward to most for this weekend. I'm big time a fan of both guys. Obviously, a fan of Brok because obvious reasons, and then Roberts just because of his fighting style. But another thing to take into consideration is that Brok has had almost double the amount of fights that Roberts has had. Brok is 15-4, Roosevelt Roberts is 9-1. Right? That doesn't sound that big of a deal. But now Brok Weaver, when you add into things like Brok Weaver, he bare knuckle boxed. Who's that huge name? Who was it? Joe Riggs. He went to decision with Joe Riggs in bare knuckle boxing. And obviously, bare knuckle boxing is a whole different ballgame. Those are like bad motherfuckers, like real bad motherfuckers. I think Brok kind of got hosed in his last fight when he got caught with that flying or that illegal knee, obviously. Yeah, man, I really like this fight. I think that Roosevelt Roberts is going to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Brok Weaver wins, but I am extremely surprised on how spread out the lines are.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to say this right now. The performance that Brok Weaver put on in his UFC debut against Kazula Vargas is not the Brok Weaver that we know. That guy is so much better than what he showed in that fight. I don't know whether it was UFC jitters, with it being his debut, whether he was just feeling his way into the fight, trying to get some reads. And Kazula Vargas is a guy that's not going to give you that sort of time. But Brok Weaver is 100% a better fighter than what he showed in that fight. I guarantee it. In regards to Roosevelt Roberts, this is a guy that I've called on previous podcasts as one of my prospects to watch in the UFC. I think the guy's super talented. He's athletic. He's slim for the division. So he's not cutting so much weight. His hands are crisp. He's, like you said, Randy, his kickboxing's good. His wrestling's good. His jiu-jitsu's good. He's got one of the nastiest choke games that I can think of right now in the UFC. The guy is super, super talented. He had the setback against Fromel Pichel. Vince Pichel is a veteran, man, and Roberts took that veteran L and came back in his next fight. He beat Yakovlev in Russia. So again, a good performance. I just think style versus style, Roberts is going to manage the distance in this fight. There's definitely going to be aggression from Brok Weaver. He's that sort of fighter. So Roberts does definitely have to be careful in those positions. He's going to be moving back at parts of this fight. But I just think that whether he's moving forwards and backwards, his striking's accurate, it's precise. He puts good 1-2s together, good combinations. And I think that's going to be enough to offset the offense of Brok Weaver coming forward. And at some point in this fight, I think we see Roberts end up looking for the takedown. He loves the takedown, the wrestling, the grappling. And I think with Vargas on top of Weaver, I think he may have shown a couple of deficiencies in Weaver's ground game. But Roosevelt Roberts is head and shoulders above Kazula Vargas in regards to his wrestling and grappling. So again, like you, Randy, I'm excited to see this fight. I do favour Roberts. I think his ceiling's higher. I think he's probably just a little bit more seasoned in the UFC at this point, and I think he's going to be able to get the win. So I'm going to take Roosevelt Roberts to win the fight. And in the next fight, we've got Hannah Cifers versus Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, a huge -430 favourite on the card. They come back on Hannah Cifers at +345. I don't see any value straight betting Mackenzie Dern. You're going to have to stake a lot of money for any decent returns in that. But absolutely, I think Mackenzie Dern is is the rightful favourite in this fight. I think that she might end up seeing -500 towards fight night. I do think more money is going to come on her. Randy, where are you at with this fight? Do you agree with the wide betting lines, or are you giving Hannah Cifers a chance in this fight?
No, man. I think those are very fair betting favorites. You know, Hannah Cifers, I think the thing that she has going for her is she's extremely tough. With Mackenzie Dern, you're not facing a fighter that's going to beat you up over time. You're facing a fighter that's going to go out there and try to take a limb or try to take your neck. Toughness is not going to get you through that. I hate to say it, man, but I think this is kind of a layup fight for Mackenzie Dern. I think the UFC probably knows what they're doing, probably trying to build her up. They put her in there with Amanda Ribas, who really didn't have at the time of the fight, and she beat Ribas, and she beat Mackenzie, and then kind of boom. And I just don't see how Hannah Cifers can win this fight, especially when you're dealing with 115-pound females. The knockout rate at that weight class isn't anything to write home about. I would be extremely surprised if Hannah Cifers comes out with this win. I don't think she's going to win a decision over Mackenzie. I think it would have to be a knockout, from hell. And does Hannah Cifers have that power? I'm not really sure. But if I were a betting man, I obviously want to put money on Mackenzie Dern, but you don't have much coming in return. This is an extremely hard fight for Hannah Cifers.
I totally agree, and I agree with what you said about Cifers in regards to her toughness. She's a farm girl. She's strong. You've heard commentators joke that when they were shaking her hand, she's got the firm hand grip. So, she is a naturally strong fighter. But in regards to her skill set here, I think she's completely out of her depth. I think even take away Mackenzie Dern's grappling and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials just for a second and look at the striking. I think this is something that Dern is visibly improved on. You look at the Amanda Ribas fight, and Amanda Ribas is on an absolute tear right now. And yes, she beat Dern and she beat her convincingly, but it wasn't a total whitewash. It's not as if she was dropping her left, right, and centre and making a limp or with low kicks or anything like that. I feel that Dern was in the fight at times. I think her striking's come on. So when you look at this fight from a striking perspective, I actually think it's relatively close. And I might even give Mackenzie Dern that edge as well. Her movement's a little bit better, lateral movement, moving in and out of range. Cifers is she moves quite well for the first couple of minutes, but then she really slows down, becomes flat-footed. And that brings me straight into the grappling, because at that point when she becomes flat-footed and the movement stops a little bit, I think Mackenzie Dern is going to be able to take advantage of that. That then becomes a fighter that is available to be taken down. I think Dern will come forward. She has got a nice single leg, which again is a development. We saw that against Ribas. She was shooting for that single leg when she didn't do that in previous fights. It was more trying to get up to the cage, clinch and take down from then. But yeah, I think at some point Cifers is going to go down. I'm quite confident that she goes down to the mat, and then it's up to Mackenzie what she wants to do. Her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials are off the chart. I almost think that she's like the female version of Rodolfo Vieira in what she's achieved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how good she actually is. So I think when she gets the fight to the mat, it's up to her what she does then. She'll either, transition from position to position, look for a submission, submit her, or she'll take her back, maybe flatten her out and finish her with ground and pound. It's up to Dern what she does at that point. But yeah, Mackenzie Dern's going to win this fight for me. And in the next fight, we've got Katlyn Chookagian versus Antonina Shevchenko. Shevchenko currently the -140 favourite, with the comeback on Chookagian at +120. I was quite surprised to see Chookagian this big of a dog. I expected a minus number next to her name. I think the value is on the dog for that reason in regards to Chookagian. Where the line goes, again, I'm not too sure. It has been fluctuating. Shevchenko was up at -160 just a few hours ago. So, yeah, there's going to be some fluctuation. Like I say, I think the value is on the underdog in this spot. Randy, who have you got, man?
I agree 100% with that assessment. I think if I'm going to guess, the reason that the numbers are the way that they are and they're flip-flop from our opinion is because of Shevchenko's last name. I think it's because she's the sister of the GOAT. Katlyn went 30. She got beat up in the third round by Valentina, but that still says a lot to what kind of talent that Katlyn Chookagian is bringing to the table. If you put Antonia and Valentina against each other, I bet you see probably a similar result. I think this fight. I think Chookagian can win this fight. I think she does win this fight. She lost a split decision to Jessica Eye, who's also a savage. She beat Joanne Calderwood, Jennifer Maia. Antonia is so new, especially to the UFC. She has excellent kickboxing, but how good is she on the ground? She lost to Roxanne Modafferi by split decision. Okay, that's tough to gauge because of how good Roxanne actually is. She beat Lucy Moldova, but I'm not even familiar with who that is. Katlyn Chookagian has been around this division. She's been in the UFC for a little bit now. She's had like 7 or 8 fights in the UFC. She beat Lauren Murphy. She lost a decision to Liz Carmouche. Liz Carmouche is a tough girl. Man, I don't think those betting odds. I think those betting odds should be flip flopped. I'm definitely going to give the edge to Chookagian. I think the experience is going to win the fight. I think the grittiness is going to win the fight. Antonia has excellent kickboxing, but like I said, how good is she actually against another tough fighter? She's coming off. Chookagian's coming off a title fight. Antonia's not. Antonia's had 2 or 3 fights in the UFC. Again, I think the odds should be flip-flopped. I think Chookagian gets the win. Not sure when, not sure how, but Chookagian gets the win.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really close fight, and I think it's going to be a fight that predominantly takes place on the feet. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Chookagian shoot a takedown either. I know that's not really a game, and she hasn't really done that, but one of my good friends on Twitter, Joe Sunsu, he mentioned something to me that got me thinking and said, well, look back to when Holly Holm fought Megan Anderson. Holly Holm wasn't a wrestler. She's by trade a boxer and kickboxer. But in that fight, she turned into a D1 wrestler, man, took her down and laid on top of her. So actually that got me thinking, would I be shocked to see that sort of game plan from Chookagian? And I wouldn't. But either way, I think it's predominantly going to take place on the feet. And the difference is I feel that Chookagian does better work at range, better work with the hands and the kicks at kicking range, maybe even inside boxing range as well. But where Shevchenko is better is when they go that bit further, they go through that boxing range and they clinch up. That's where Shevchenko's good. She's got the good Thai plum clinch, lands good knees from it, pushes her opponent back. So this is what's going to make the fight really close. And it's almost who can dictate that range and who can set that pace of the fight. But it's a close fight. And in close fights that I personally think is going to go to a split decision, I always favour the underdog in those positions at +120, because if this fight is close and does go to a decision, then the fighter at plus money was the right bet inside. So I am going to take Katlyn to Chookagian to win the fight, and I think she gets it done by a split decision. And in the next fight, we've got the Alpha Ginger, Spike Carlyle versus Billy Quarantillo. We've got Billy Quarantillo at -155. The comeback on Spike Carlyle at +135. I think there's value on the dog here. I was really impressed with Spike's last fight in his debut against Daylon Cruz. And yeah, like I say, where the line goes from here, I'm not too sure. I could see some money coming back in on Spike Carlyle. I do think the line is a little bit wide considering what we've seen lately. So yeah, value on the dog. Randy, who have you got?
I have Billy Q winning this fight. So this fight is 150-pound catch weight, and to my knowledge, based on Billy Q's social media, I believe he made it known that it was a concern on Spike's end, or Spike's team end, that making 145 pounds would be an issue. I do know that Billy Q I've trained with him many times. I trained with him as late as last week.
Wow.
He is on weight. He's been on weight. His fight got canceled because of the whole coronavirus thing, but he has not left the gym. He stayed in shape. He stayed on weight, stayed ready. Spike Carlyle, you cannot say that. He wants this fight at 150 pounds because it's obviously extremely apparent that he hasn't been staying ready. Billy Quarantillo is extremely resilient, extremely brutal in there. The pressure is relentless. He's always moving forward, extremely tough, extremely durable. Spike Carlyle got hurt with the first kick that Alon threw in his debut. I don't think Billy's going to come out and throw those crafty kicks. Billy's not as tall as Alon, but Billy has something different, and that's that toughness, that grittiness. I think Billy Q wins this fight. I just don't see how Spike's going to knock Billy out, or how he's going to out-tough Billy. especially when you're talking about gas tank. Billy Q's gas tank is next level. That boy is always in shape, always grinding, and that same thing can't be said about Spike. And my perfect backup is that this fight is 150 pounds because of his side. I think Billy Q gets this fight done. He stayed ready, stayed prepared. He's had essentially an 18-week fight camp. Spike's had a week and a half. Billy Q gets the win.
Interesting, and you're dropping some nice knowledge there for people listening for sure. In regards to how I saw this fight, Spike Carlyle is a guy that's got this weird power. You watch every single one of his knockouts on tape. Then it's never a simple straight right hand or a combination that he's caught 2 or 3 punches and he knocks his opponent out with. The spinning back fists, the weird elbows, which is what happened, the start of the end of the fight against Cruz in his debut. And then when you look back at his credentials and what he brings to the cage, he's a judo black belt, BJJ brown belt, may even potentially be a black belt. I'm unsure about that. 3 times national BJJ champion as well. The guy has got credentials coming off the chart, and I just feel that he's going to be one of these fighters that are a little overlooked, a little underrated until it gets to a point where people are noticing him and they're noticing how good he actually is. I do think he's a good fighter. However, the one thing you've just touched upon, Randy, and it kind of sort of confirms one of my concerns in this fight is if the fight does go late, because I haven't seen lately anyway, Spike Carlyle go 3 rounds. What's he going to look like if the fight is fast-paced, which I do think it is going to be a fast-paced fight? What's he going to look like in round 3? You're telling me Billy Quarantillo is absolutely in shape, 18-week fight camp. You've trained with him. I completely take on board what you say. So it does sound to me like if this fight goes late, then Quarantillo is absolutely going to have that advantage in regards to potential gas tank. And like you've said, you've heard that it's from the other side, the reason why this is a catch weight at 150 pounds. So yeah, it does make it an interesting fight with how the fight's going to go. I just think Spike is going to do something early, whether it be getting Quarantillo down. He showed on the Contender Series fight he can be taken down, he can be controlled on the mat. I feel that if Spike does get on top, then Billy might have some issues getting up, at least at first. And then Spike Carlyle's got this weird knockout power. And we were saying the same things about Volkan Ozdemir when he first came into the UFC. He was just knocking people out with stuff that we couldn't really understand. The same goes for Spike. As for the betting line, like I say, even if this does become a close fight, like I said, for Chookagian, I always go with the underdog for a fight that could potentially be close. But I'm going to take the dog in Spike Carlyle to win the fight. And in the next fight, this is an interesting one. I've seen so much back and forth between these two guys. We've got Klidson Abreu versus Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill, the -130 favourite. The comeback on Abreu is +110 underdog. The line, again, is really, really close. There's arguments for either side. Should Jamahal Hill be the underdog? Should Abreu be the underdog? I think, again, like I said with Ivanov and Sakai, that if you've got a good read on this fight, then it's bettable either side. Where the line goes, I actually think this drops into a pick-em come fight night. I do think that more money comes in on Abreu. Money's been pouring on him all week. I think some more comes in on him. But Randy, between the two fighters, who have you got winning, man? It's such an interesting fight.
Yeah, so I definitely think that this is absolutely a pick-em fight. I think it's pretty fucking close as you can get. Especially for this card, maybe even the closest on that card. I'm not entirely familiar with either of the guys, but I do remember Hill's win on the Contender Series with those elbows in that second round over Popik. I'm not entirely sure of Abreu. What you can say is that he has a gas tank. He went 3 rounds with Sam Alvey. It's tough to say the punch and power, but you can obviously assume that he has pretty good jiu-jitsu. He went 3 rounds with Sam Alvey. He's coming off a split decision loss to Shamil Gamstov. I'm not entirely sure who that is. But based on what I know on this fight, which is not that much, so I wouldn't be the person to listen to in regard to betting. I am going to pull for Jamahal Hill just because I know that he has never tasted defeat. He's a power puncher. He's tough. And he's super athletic. I wouldn't base your decision on who you're going to bet on based on my analysis with this fight. But I am going to pull for Jamahal Hill in this fight.
Yeah, I'm picking Jamahal Hill to win this fight as well, but I'm going to make an argument for both guys because it is a really close fight now. Jamahal Hill, like you said, his Contender Series fight was an unbelievable performance. Then he comes into the UFC against Darko Stosic, who again is an absolute tank under Mirko Cro Cop. So Hill goes out there and puts on an absolute clinic against Stosic. He gets taken down a couple of times, he gets back up, and he absolutely pieces Stosic up to a point where you're just looking at him and thinking, this guy's a phenom. But then on the flip side, you've got Klidson Abreu. They call him the Russian Terror. He's been over in the Russian regionals, taking all their guys out, submitting the Russians in their own backyard. That's where he gets his nickname from. And you can argue with Abreu that, his last three opponents, Ankalaev, who in my opinion is a future champion in the UFC, but again, a Dagestani-born Russian, a good wrestler. Then you've got Sam Alvey, who's got godlike takedown defense. Even if you do get him down momentarily, he'll get back up. And then he goes in there and fights Shamil Gamzatov, who's a freestyle wrestler, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. So his three fights in the UFC have been against guys that he's not going to be able to take down and roll on. One of Hill's Achilles heels over his entire MMA career so far is the fact that he can be taken down. Now, his get-ups are getting better, which makes this fight interesting because if he does get taken down, I trust him more to get back up to his feet than what I did a few fights ago. So this is where it's an interesting fight. I think if Abreu can get him down a couple of times and settle him on the mat, get him away from the cage, he'll be able to roll and potentially get a submission or just stay on top of him and win the rounds. But like I say, I feel that the development of Hill at this stage is going to be rapidly developing. You can see it in his game. And the key thing is his get-up game is getting a lot better. I think if he can get up, if he's taken down, we're not going to see a relentless wrestling game plan from Abreu like he's going to be a Khabib out there and shooting 10 takedowns a fight should he need to. I think he'll shoot 2 or 3 and see where he's at from there. I think if Hill can get up, maintain that range and distance, which is key for Hill, I think he's going to piece him up and take a win. But listen, if Abreu gets him down and submits him, that's not going to surprise me either. For the sake of the podcast, I'm going to pick Jamahal Hill to win this fight. And in the next fight, a very interesting fight, possibly my favourite fight on the entire card, we've got Tim Elliott against Brandon Royval. Tim Elliott, the -170 favourite, the comeback on Royval at +150. I think there's value on the dog here. I don't think this line should be this wide. I think both have got very similar styles, but I just like the trajectory of Royval. I like the aggression. And I do see the line, again, fluctuating a little bit because there is some love for Tim Elliott. You can understand that he's been in the cage with some of the best. But I think it does settle. The line does settle around where it is right now. The value on the dog for me. But Randy, who have you got?
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Brandon Royval. I'm not entirely sure with Brandon Royval, but I've read a million things about him. Saying that it was, the inevitable of him getting the UFC. It's all these right things. The question that someone's gonna present right away about Brandon taking this fight last minute is the gas tank. But he's training over there in Colorado, so I don't think there will be an issue with the gas tank. He is on a tear as of lately. His last loss was to Casey Kenney right before Casey Kenney got in the UFC. He lost to three rounds or 5 rounds? He lost 5 rounds. So he went 5 rounds with Casey Kenney. Casey Kenney is a killer, already a killer. He's only had a few fights in the UFC, and he's shown, insane things. This dude has unlimited potential. So that loss to Casey Kenney, that's a UFC caliber fight right there. He went 5-5s with Casey Kenney, and Casey Kenney, I think, fought 2 weeks after that fight. So that's a UFC fight right there. That's a UFC caliber Casey Kenney. He went 5 rounds with Casey Kenney. That to me is going to show the winner in this fight. He's coming in. He beat Joby Sanchez, another UFC veteran, first round armbar. Another win over Nate Williams with almost 45 pro fights. Beat him in 23 seconds with another armbar. Tim Elliott, I think, is going downhill. I think Tim Elliott is on a he's fighting for his job on this fight. He's on a 2-fight skid. Lost 3 out of his last 4. Last beat Mark De La Rosa. I think Tim Kenney is absolutely better than Mark De La Rosa, but he lost a decision to Askar Askarov. Devison Figueiredo, Ben Nugent. He went 3 rounds with Mighty Mouse Johnson, but that's back in 2016. That's 4 years ago. That's a tough sell. I'm gonna go with Brandon Royval in this fight. I think Brandon Royval, though I'm not extremely familiar with him, based on his record and what I've been reading, he has a ton of potential, and I think this is the fight where this fight makes sense for both guys, and I think Brandon could find himself in a pretty nice position in that flyweight division coming off a win on this fight, and I think he's gonna grow his stock immensely with a win over Tim Elliott.
Yeah, and just touching upon the point that you made, Randy, with the Casey Kenney fight, I hear as well from one of my friends on Twitter, Vegas Pete, that Brandon Royval took that fight off the couch as well. It was a short notice fight, which just makes it a little bit more impressive. I think that both these guys have got similar styles. They're both hands down. They both come forward. They both like to bang on the feet until it ends up on the floor. That's ultimately what we're looking at. But I feel that Royval is quicker on the feet. I think that his aggression on the feet is a little bit more aggressive. I think that he's got slightly more power. His punches seem to come from all kinds of crazy angles as well. So I think that Tim Elliott is hittable in this fight, and that's just the striking. The one thing that does worry me with Royval is he gets taken down a little too much, and quite easily as well, to the point where I'm asking myself the question, is this guy actually bad at defending takedowns, or is he just accepting them because he's so dangerous off his back? It's been a very long time, and I can't think of another fighter off the top of my head that can throw his legs up over the shoulder of his opponents and lock up arm bars and triangles faster than what I've seen Brandon Royval does. They are super, super quick. So yes, Tim Elliott is a good scrambler. He can get himself out of bad positions, but I don't believe Tim Elliott's ever fought anybody as dangerous off his back and dangerous in speed as well as what he's about to face with Brandon Royval. I could see an argument for Tim Elliott potentially taking Royval down, getting back up, rinse and repeat, getting sort of 8, 9, 10 takedowns in the fight and winning a wrestling-based decision from that outcome. But like you said, the trajectories are really important for this fight as well, because Brandon Royval is absolutely a fighter that's up and coming, and then you've got Tim Elliott that his better days are behind him. So the trajectory is key. I think Brandon Royval's going to have slightly too much speed, slightly too much aggression, and it wouldn't shock me if he submitted Tim Elliott either. So I'm going to take Brandon Royval to win the fight. And in the next fight, we've just spoke about it and we've just mentioned it. We've got Casey Kenney versus Louis Smolka. Casey Kenney, the -275 favourite. The comeback on Smolka at +235 as the underdog. I think there's marginal value on Casey Kenney. I also think that there's an argument that the line should be a little bit higher, maybe closer to -300 or maybe a bit more. I'm just struggling to really see a true path to victory for Louis Smolka. And as for where the line goes, I do think it edges a little bit more towards the -300 come fight night. But Randy, Casey Kenney, Louis Smolka, who have you got?
So I don't think that those odds are that far stretched. One thing that I definitely want to know is I like Louis Smolka. I like what he's done. I admire his resilience. Went on a 4-fight skid in the UFC. He swallowed his pride, came back 4 big wins, and then or 3 big wins, and then got himself signed again. He's looked really good as of late. Him and I were slated to fight back on that same card back in March. One thing to know about that fight was he was fighting Davey Grant. Davey Grant is not this explosive, savage wrestler with great judo and an awesome clinch game. Casey Kenney is that. Casey Kenney came in short notice, coming off that Brandon Royval fight, into the Shark Tank immediately, fighting Ray Borg. Beat Ray Borg on 2 weeks' notice after fighting at 125 pounds. At 125 pounds, 2 weeks prior. He on his sophomore fight in the UFC, he fought Manny Bermudez. Manny Bermudez was a killer in the bantamweight division, submitting fucking everyone. And Casey Kenney had Manny's number right away. Manny was completely outclassed in that fight, in my opinion. Casey Kenney is extremely smothering, extremely gritty, extremely tough. Casey Kenney lost his last fight, obviously, to Merab, but Merab, you can't really put that against anyone. Merab is a savage, a fucking savage. And he didn't get finished by him. That's a feather in the cap on its own. Louis Smolka, it's hard to say the same things about. I think Smolka is kind of in over his head with this fight. Can he win? Can he knock him out? 1,000%, absolutely. But I don't think you're going to submit Casey Kenney, and then that's how you would have to beat Casey Kenney. Casey Kenney's relentless in forward pressure, closing the distance, making you drown. He drowns his opponents. And I think that's what's kind of gonna happen in this fight. I think those odds are fair. I'm gonna go Casey Kenney with the win.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can put it any better myself, Randy. One thing that I did hear, though, as well, in regards to Merab Dvalishvili, I heard that his team, Seralongo, didn't tell Merab that his fight against Kenney was at elevation because they didn't want Merab to work any harder than he already does, which is just crazy to think. So that just tells you how much of a machine, no pun intended, obviously that's Merab's nickname, that Merab actually is. So losing to Merab, I'm super high on that guy. I think he's top 10 potential at least. Yeah, there's no shame to losing Merab. But like you said, I'm struggling to find a true path to victory for Smolka. Yes, like you said, he could knock him out. But again, I do think that's a low percentage outcome. I think Kenney is aggressive coming forward. I think he likes to throw his hands. I think at that point when Smolka's getting that sort of aggression coming towards him, I don't think he'll deal with that as well. He's the much better striker moving forwards and landing on his opponent. I don't think Kenney allows that to happen. So I think Kenney's the better striker. When it comes to the wrestling, Kenney will absolutely get him down if he wants him down. He's dealt with guys like Ray Borg and Merab Dvalishvili and Manny Bermudez. Those are three tough fights, and especially Ray Borg. You've got to be super impressed with that. And then on the mat, look at what we've just said about Brandon Royval, how fast he is, how quick he throws his legs up, how tricky he is on the mat. If you go back and watch that Kenney and Royval fight, Kenney was absolutely dominating Royval on the mat. And I think Royval is a better grappler than Louis Smolka. So this is where I'm struggling to really see a true path to victory for Louis Smolka. And for that reason, I'm going to pick Casey Kenney to win the fight. And finally, the last fight we're going to talk about, the first fight on the card, we've got Chris Gutierrez versus Vince Morales. Chris Gutierrez, the current minus 115 favorite. The comeback on Vince Morales, minus 105. I think, again, as I've said it a couple of times tonight, if you've got a strong read on either side, there's value because both lines are playable. As well as where the line goes for this fight, I think it's probably going to fluctuate. I do think we see Gutierrez come into the fight as the favorite, but it won't be a big favorite. Randy, Gutierrez, Morales, who have you got?
I think this is a very well-matched fight. I think it's a very fair fight, and I think it has a great place on the card. I'm gonna say Vince Morales is gonna get the win. I don't think it's gonna be anything exciting. I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a fun fight, a good fight. But I don't think anyone's gonna be going out there and throwing wheel kicks and making it this insane fight. Morales beat Amin Zahabi. Went 3 rounds with Benito Lopez, lost to Benito Lopez. Another extremely important thing to note is he went three rounds with Song Yadong. That's a massive feather in the cap. Lost his Contender Series fight to Domingo Pilardi, which you can't have really any shame over it. Domingo's an extremely long and unorthodox guy. Man, I like this fight a lot. I'm gonna go with Morales. I think that Gutierrez is good. He beat Ryan McDonald by decision. Ryan McDonald, I don't think, in my opinion, was UFC caliber. I thought that was a pretty layup fight. But he had a tough first fight versus Raoni Barcelos. Raoni Barcelos, obviously a savage grappler, next level type shit. Lost a 3 rounds fight against Geraldo de Freitas. Geraldo de Freitas, another one of those guys, extremely good jiu-jitsu. Bigger guy, 5'9" for the weight class. I think Gutierrez is very good, but I think stylistically, I think Vince Morales is going to get the job done. Vince Morales by decision.
Yeah, it's a close fight, man, for sure. I'm actually going the other way with Gutierrez. I think that Morales is a little underrated in regards to what he brings to the table with his boxing and his timing of his strikes and always wanting to move forward. Chris Gutierrez is a fighter that is a slow starter and does feel his way into the fight. But the one thing that Gutierrez has got is a nasty calf kick. And you saw him dropping De Freitas everywhere with that calf kick eventually. So I feel that with Vince Morales' boxing abilities, and that's where his strengths are, I do think if Gutierrez can get on that calf and really hurt it, it's going to start hurting Morales and he's going to shut his game down a little bit. The punches might not come in as much volume as we've seen in previous fights. And at that point, Gutierrez might be able to take over the fight. So I see that as a possible scenario for the fight. I think Gutierrez is just going to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit more cautious, a little bit more technical. And like I say, if he gets on that calf, I think he's going to get the job done. So I'm going to take Chris Gutierrez to win this fight. And before we wrap this up again, Randy, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on to the show. And I'm just going to give you a moment to, shout out anything you need to, if you want to shout out any family members, friends, coaches, sponsors, anything that you need to, man, the floor's yours.
No, man, nothing in particular. I just, appreciate everyone who's following the journey and, hopefully get back, recover from this injury, and I'll be back hopefully sometime in the next 2 months anyway. That's really it, man. I appreciate you having me on. It was a good time. Broke down some fights. If I had a little bit more notice, I would have been able to get some more educated feedback. But, I don't think that was that bad from just coming off a whim. Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. That was cool. That was fun. And I would love to do it again for sure.
No, it was a great technical analysis, Randy. Thank you very much for that. And that's it for this episode of On the Moneyline. I hope you all enjoyed it. And once again, guys, I appreciate all the likes to the video and the subscriptions to the MMAPlay365 channel. Remember, you can get all the betting advice you'll ever need over at MMAPlay365.com. We cater for long-term gamblers that like to build their own bets and strategies, gamblers that just want to follow exactly what I bet on. And as a long-term winning gambler over the last 3.5 years, that'll likely come good for you as well. And we also cater for the fun gamblers that like the fun long shot parlays, or ACCAs as we call them in the UK. We have plenty of different packages for you guys to choose from, and they're all very affordable prices as well. Just hop onto MMAPlay365.com and see what's best for you. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you for the next event.